In the year 1206, a child who had been kidnapped as a boy, sold into slavery, abandoned by his own tribe, and left for dead on the steppe, rose to become the most powerful conqueror the world has ever seen. At its peak, his empire stretched from the Pacific Ocean to the gates of Eastern Europe. 1/4 of the entire surface of the earth under one man's control. No empire before it, no empire since, has ever come close. This is the story of Genghis Khan and the most feared empire in human history. His real name was not Genghis Khan. He was born Temujin around 1162 AD on the vast wind-swept steppe of Mongolia. His childhood was brutal beyond imagination. When Temujin was 9 years old, his father was poisoned by a rival tribe. The clan that his father had led immediately abandoned the family, a widow and her children left alone on the steppe, with no food, no protection, and no future. They survived by eating roots, berries, and whatever small animals they could catch. As a young teenager, Temujin was captured by a rival clan and forced to wear a heavy wooden collar as a slave and prisoner. He escaped, and from that moment, everything changed. Temujin began building alliances, slowly, deliberately, ruthlessly. He united the scattered and feuding Mongol tribes, one by one, through a combination of brilliant diplomacy, strategic marriages, and absolute military dominance. By 1206, every tribe on the Mongolian steppe had submitted to his authority. A great assembly was called, and at that assembly, Temujin was given a new title, Genghis Khan, universal ruler, and the world would never be the same. To understand how the Mongols conquered the world, you have to understand their military, because it was unlike anything that had ever existed before. The foundation of the Mongol army was the horse archer. Every Mongol warrior grew up on horseback. From the age of 3, Mongol children were riding. By 5, they were shooting arrows. By 10, they were hunting. This meant that by the time they became soldiers, they were the most skilled, mounted warriors on the face of the earth. A Mongol warrior could fire 12 arrows per minute, accurately, while riding at full gallop. No army in the world could match that. Genghis Khan restructured the entire army on a decimal system. Groups of 10, groups of 100, groups of 1,000, groups of 10,000. Every unit had a clear commander. Every commander had clear orders. The chain of command was absolute. Discipline was brutal. If one soldier fled from battle, his entire unit of 10 was executed. If one unit fled, the entire unit of 100 was executed. Nobody ran. Before invading any territory, the Mongols sent spies ahead, merchants, travelers, diplomats. They mapped roads, counted defenders, identified weaknesses, and reported back. By the time the Mongol army arrived, they already knew everything about their enemy. When they encountered walled cities, they hired Chinese engineers who taught them to build siege weapons, catapults, trebuchets, battering rams, the most advanced siege technology of the medieval world, operated by nomads from the steppe. Nothing could stop them. In 1211, Genghis Khan led his armies south across the Gobi Desert and smashed through the defenses of the Jin dynasty in northern China. The Great Wall, that enormous structure built specifically to keep northern invaders out, meant nothing. The Mongols went around it, through it, over it. By 1215, the great city of Zhongdu, modern-day Beijing, was burning. The conquest of China took over 60 years. Tens of millions of people died. Cities that had stood for centuries were reduced to rubble. And yet, from China, the Mongols took something invaluable: technology, administration systems, gunpowder, printing. The Mongols were not just destroyers, they were the greatest appropriators of knowledge in history. They took what worked used it to become even more powerful. If the conquest of China was devastating, what happened to the Islamic world was catastrophic beyond comprehension. In 1219, Genghis Khan turned west. His target was the Khwarezmian Empire, one of the most powerful Muslim states in Central Asia. The reason for the attack? The Shah of Khwarezm had made a fatal mistake. He had executed Mongol trade ambassadors. Genghis Khan sent a message: "You have chosen war." What followed was one of the most complete destructions in human history. The great cities of Central Asia, Samarkand, Bukhara, Merv, Nishapur, cities that had been centers of learning, science, art, and culture for centuries, were systematically annihilated. The city of Merv, which may have been the largest city in the world at that time, was destroyed so completely that it never fully recovered. The Library of Baghdad, and one of the greatest collections of knowledge in human history, containing hundreds of thousands of manuscripts, was thrown into the Tigris River in 1258. The water ran black with ink for days. Some historians argue that the Mongol destruction of the Islamic world set back human progress by centuries. By the time the Mongols turned toward Europe, the continent had already heard the stories: cities burned to nothing, armies annihilated, entire civilizations erased. Europe was terrified. In 1241, the Mongol army entered Poland and Hungary simultaneously, two armies, two countries, at the same time. The Polish and Hungarian armies were among the most powerful military forces in medieval Europe. They were destroyed. At the Battle of Mohi, the Hungarian army was wiped out in a single day. The Mongols rode all the way to the Adriatic Sea. They stood at the gates of Western Europe. And then they stopped. The great Khan Ögedei, son of Genghis Khan, had died back in Mongolia. By Mongol law, all leaders had to return to Mongolia to elect a new great Khan. The armies turned around, and Western Europe never knew how close it had come to complete destruction. Some historians call it the greatest stroke of luck in European history. So why was nobody able to stop the Mongols? The answer is not simple. First, speed. The Mongol army moved faster than any army before it. They carried minimal supplies. Each warrior had multiple horses, rotating between them to maintain speed. They could cover distances in days that would take European armies weeks. Second, psychological warfare. The Mongols deliberately used terror as a military strategy. Cities that surrendered immediately were treated relatively well. Cities that resisted were completely destroyed. Every man, woman, and child, word spread, and city after city surrendered without a fight, simply out of fear. Third, adaptability. Most armies fought one way. The Mongols fought every way. Cavalry charges, feigned retreats, ambushes, siege warfare, night attacks, psychological manipulation. They had no single strategy. They had every strategy. And fourth, unity. While their enemies were divided, arguing with each other, fighting over territory and power, the Mongols were one. A single command structure, a single purpose, absolute discipline against a unified force of that nature. Divided enemies had no chance. The Mongol Empire began to fracture after the death of Genghis Khan in 1227. His successors divided the empire into four great khanates. But the legacy of the Mongols is far more complex than simple destruction. The Mongol peace, known as the Pax Mongolica, was a period of relative stability across the vast Mongol Empire that lasted for nearly a century. During this time, trade flourished on a scale never seen before. The Silk Road, the ancient network of trade routes connecting China to Europe, was safer than it had ever been. Ideas, technology, art, and disease all traveled these routes. The Black Plague, which killed a third of Europe's population, traveled west along Mongol trade routes, but so did paper money, printing technology, astronomical knowledge, medical advances. The Mongol Empire did not just destroy, it connected the world in ways that had never been possible before. And in doing so, it laid the foundations for the modern global economy. From a kidnapped child left to die on the Mongolian steppe to the ruler of the largest contiguous empire in human history. The story of Genghis Khan and the Mongol Empire is not just a story of war and destruction, it is a story of adaptation, of discipline, of ruthless intelligence, and of how a people that the world had ignored remade that world completely. The Mongols changed trade routes, they changed borders, they changed the spread of disease, they changed the course of civilizations, and they did it all in less than a century. Subscribe to Byte Roots, because every week we go deeper into the hidden origins of the world around us.